Okay, we're back again with another amplifier review, another Taramps. That's right. They sent this one over for me to check out. The Big Boss Bass 3000 watts. Let's get out the good old utility knife, open it up, and see what's inside. Other than a finely wrapped amplifier and a sticker, we also have a remote clip indicator which plugs into the telephone style connector on the side of the amp. And here's the amp. We're going to take a closer look at all the connections and everything, but first we have to peel off that plastic.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
In the looks department, this Taramps looks like a typical Taramps amplifier of this size. Nothing special here other than the wording, and there's something hidden behind this panel here. Some RGB LEDs, we'll show those later. Now there are three different models, including the Big Boss 8, the Big Boss 5, and the Big Boss 3. We'll consider this one the Boss Baby.
Bam! I'm the boss.
This is not a Mickey Mouse program!
At the time of me editing the video, this amp is around $300 on Amazon. Check the link in the video description for the latest updated price. Here on one end of the amp, you see RCA in and out, gain control, 4 volts down to 0.2 volts, also high pass or subsonic from 8 Hz to 30 Hz, low pass 200 down to 60, also a bass boost of 0 to 10 dB from 35 to 60 Hz. That is variable, which is always nice. We also have the monitor level remote plug to plug in that clip indicator, and also a single speaker output for around 8 gauge of speaker wire. It is a single output. Even with monos, we like to have multiple different terminals there, so it helps out with multiple subs, so that's kind of a drawback here. On the opposite side, we do have a fan, and we do have the inputs. They call these 0 gauge inputs, but they must be American Standard 1.0 because they will not fit most car audio 1.0. Also, we have 2 different fans, one on either side of the amp, which push cool air through all the way through the amp. You'll see that when I open it up later. As far as ratings go, this monoblock is rated 1700 watts at 4 ohms, and then from 2 ohms down to half an ohm, it's rated 3000 watts. As far as dimensions go, on the long side, 9.5 inches. For the width, 9.4 inches. For the height, 2.8 inches. Now, one of the features that may stand out of this amp are the RGB LEDs, which are shown here on the top panel. They look pretty cool. There's so many different modes. If you check Parker the Basshead's video, I'll leave the link in the video description. You can see he cycles through most of these. Everything from VU meters to effects to even American flags. Very cool. 108 different possible options there. So the important part here, of course, is let's fire up the good old SMD DeMoore Engineering amplifier dyno and test the power output. On the left, you'll see that. In the middle, the ohm load. The right, you'll see the voltage of the dyno. It will stop when the test reaches its conclusion. We'll also have a clamp indicator so we can measure efficiency of the amplifier. First test we'll do is 4 ohms. The amp is rated 1700 watts at 14.4. We're going to keep it as close to 14.4 as we can. Here we go. 1728 right at 14 volts, so a little bit under voltage wise, but right at the rated power, so very nice. Uncertified test takes us up to the clipping point. And there we go, 1737 at 13.84. I will say, hats off to Taramps, as in the past, these amps wouldn't even run certified mode, so they made some changes to their amps and made them much cleaner. Dynamically, over 1800, 1842 at 14.14. Now let's check the efficiency. Based on the Fluke clamp, we measured around 80% efficient at 4 ohms. Next up, let's try 2 ohms. The amplifier is rated 3000 watts. Everything from 2 ohms down. Certified test first. Again, it runs cleanly, no problems. Right at that 3000 watts, 2976. Our voltage dipped just a little bit to around 14 volts. So given it 14.4, we would have easily met the rated power. Uncertified to clipping, look at this. 3003 right at 14 volts. That's nice. Now let's try the dynamic, sending the pulse track of 40 Hertz into the amp. And yep, you can see here, definitely boosts up around 10% more power. 3,350 watts, 14.49, and it jumped up there a little bit, 3,377. Efficiency dropped just a little bit, 78% at 2 ohms. Now let's try the 1 ohm test again, 3000 watts, rated power 14.4. Certified test first. You'll see it does count cleanly. And there you go, almost 4,000, 3986 at 13.78. Yo! Let's try uncertified up to the clipping point. See, can we bust 4,000 watts? Yes, 4308 at 13.64. But what about dynamic? If we're at 4308, are we going to bust 45? Oh, we're busting 5K, 5689. Now our voltage is strong here. We're right at 15 volts thanks to the lithium battery, but 5689 at 14.99. Efficiency is 86. Now, I would say that's probably not right. The Fluke needs just a little bit of time to capture that current pull, and I think the Taramps shuts down the current so quickly that it was not able to capture that properly. I don't think it's 86% efficient at 1 ohm. But if you guys want to see lower than 1 ohm tests, make sure you stick around to the very end because I will show all the way down to a 0.5 ohm. As far as power and subs, I'm going to send you to Parker the Basshead. Check link in the video description to see his full video of this powering his 8 15-inch subwoofers. I know some people are going to be saying, sure, it makes the power, but how does it sound? Well, I implore you to check out the video by Bear Vids he did months ago with this super high-end JBL amplifier that was made with no expenses spared, designed for the best sound quality. He compared this against the Taramps and let other people compare it as well.
Switch between the two amplifiers and see if you can tell us which is which.
This is one of the coolest videos I've seen of subwoofer sound quality comparison. Check link in the video description for the full video. Next up, let's take the bottom panel off and find out what's inside this full bridge Brazilian style amplifier. Taramp still uses the Torx style bits. If you need one of these fancy precision screwdrivers, check a link in the video description. I will link to my favorite one. Now let's get the screws out of the bottom here and pop the panel off. Take a closer look at the guts, and there you go. A lot of you can say that's not much. Well, that's full bridge technology here. There are not a lot of components here. You will see the 4 filter caps there for the power supply, 4700 microfarad, 25 volts. Also for the outputs, you'll see we have the larger, of course, 3300 microfarad, 160 volt caps. There's a couple of those. Also the dual fans, aka smart coolers. I love the name brand here. Again, these don't come on until the amp sees a load. And we do have these cheapy, which I can't stand, plastic potentiometers, which will probably break over time. And check out this wiring on the board. Not really sure what's up with that. But you can see here there's several different models that use the same board. They just put a resistor in to denote the two differences. Now the Smart 3 is an amp that Taramps came up with a couple years ago. I'll try to point out the differences that I see from a non-technician. It looks like the same amount of transistors for the power supply as well as the outputs. The thing I will notice is different is the transformer looks a little bit more wound here on the Big Boss 3. Also, there seems to be a little bit more components there on the right that could be controllers for the RGB LEDs. Now let's try the pros and cons of the Big Boss 3. Value per watt can't be beat. This thing makes a lot of power per watt. Rated power plus, obviously. RGB light show if you like to see that. It does have a variable subsonic filter. Also a variable bass boost and frequency. Is it low ohm stable? It's rated down to 0.5 ohm. You have to stick to the very end to find out what power it does. Things to consider: the not true 1.0 inputs. You can't fit the real car audio 1.0 wire. Plastic cheap potentiometers. It does have a single RCA in and out. So if you want to use a head unit going into this, a lot of times you'll have to use a Y adapter. The bass remote is separate. It does have plain looks, and it does only have a single speaker output. I'd appreciate a like if you like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you like this type of content. Always more coming. Thanks to Taramps for sending this amp over with no restrictions, giving it to you like it is. Thanks to those who support me on patreon.com/oldschoolstereo. This is Big D. I'm out of here. Low ohm test you want, low ohm test you've got. 0.8 certified. 4,422 watts at 13.86 volts. That's some power, my friends, from a 3,000 watt, $300 amp. Uncertified to clipping, 4418 at 13.9. Again, we're pulling well over 300 amps here. If you're going to run one of these, you are going to need to have at least an extra battery. So make sure you take your electrical into consideration. Boss 3 here pumping out dynamic power 6736 at 15 volts. Next up, 0.67 certified, right at 5K, 4904 at 13.75. What about to clipping, uncertified 0.67? This is a crazy ohm load. Right at it again, right at 5,000 watts. And the amp knows when to kind of cut off the current. You can see there on the clamp at least, it's not measuring much over 300 amps, which we're going to talk about that a little bit here at the very end. Dynamically 7,347 watts. Now half an ohm, these tests are just crazy, but this amp did 5,538 watts at 14 volts to 1% distortion. That is insane for a 300 watt, $300 amplifier. Uncertified to clipping 5625 at 14.33. And finally, the one everybody likes to see, the dynamic test at half an ohm, 8,449 watts. Once again, the clamp was not able to capture the correct current, so we did not get 130% efficiency. But there you have it. There are all the tests. Big D, I'm out.